Good morning. I stand in a room full of outstanding thinkers, outstanding doers on this subject, and I think stand between the lovely address from Mr. Bhavicha, that was fantastic, sir, and some lovely conversations that are happening. So I will not take a lot of time. Mr. Botakur, the Balipara family, I think it's been an outstanding journey for 12 years. Congratulations, and I think we've been privileged to be able to walk with you for some of these years and build together. It's a very difficult conversation, and I think the articulation of the third pole and what this means has sort of come about in the last few years. So I'm sure we'll have a lot of conversation around that. But when we look around now on conservation, on biodiversity, on this entire agenda, we see a glut of perspectives. There's a techno-scientific perspective, there's an academic perspective, okay, then there's a community perspective. There are multiple languages that are spoken, and the beauty of a platform like this is that it brings all these languages together and tries to make something of it, and that takes time. That takes time, and what we see here, the agenda that we see here today, the articulation, the clarity of thoughts that we see here today, it's not a wonder that it's taken a decade and more to sort of come here. I think we've also looked at some platforms in the Rajashri Foundation to try and look at dialogue as a powerful tool, and maybe I'm just going to put out a bit of a thought there that we've discussed, we're at the liberty of discussing. Maybe the good starting point is to see this. There's a lot of conversation about the last mile, but I don't think enough time is spent on decoding the last mile. And there's a slight habitual reality of standing at a distance and looking at the last mile and saying that, okay, this is what it must look like. The beauty of a platform like this is, you take the last mile and you grapple with it and you understand it in all its glory. Not just its need, but all its glory, because ultimately the wisdom rests there. The custodians, as Mr. Bharucha said, the custodians are there. And, if you just invert the thing, then maybe everything else, maybe green finance, maybe science, tech, everything is an enabler which builds on that wisdom. That wisdom is not the last mile, that's actually the first mile. And everything else is to make sure that doesn't go away anymore. It's much more difficult than it seems to be. And to my mind, the only answer is this dialogue. Dialogue where everyone leaves who they are outside the room, comes into a room as equals and says, what's happening, and that's what you've built. And that's I think it's brilliant. For us, in the Tata Foundation, we undertook a similar bet about 11 years ago. It's called Sambad, where we realized that there's a lot of conversation on indigenous communities, which is so relevant to the third pole narrative also, around the tribal communities of the country. And we realized that most of the lens that is placed is a needs-based lens. And obviously development indices, life outcomes are not where they should have been. But maybe the magic lies elsewhere. Maybe the magic, we're missing an entire point, and that's the journey that Sambad has undertaken. It's just a platform of dialogue. We didn't know where we wanted to go, much like I think when we also started, there really wasn't a defined this thing. There was a thought that something needs to be done. Today, Sambad is a platform where we just finished this 11th year, we just entered the 12th year. Today, it's a platform that brings together 256 of the 705 scheduled tribes of the country in dialogue, in conversations. I know there are some, our leadership program alumni in the room, etc. What has been wonderful is walking this path with Balipara, is we find a lot of resonance in both the approach and also the understanding that, sometimes conversations on conservation have a different heartbeat. They have a different language, and sometimes we need the patience to understand that language. They're not often available in PowerPoints or in Excel sheets or language, and maybe they're expressed through music, maybe they're expressed through art, maybe they're expressed through cuisines, cooking. And both the confidence as well as the wisdom finds different ways to express themselves. Maybe it's for us to wake up and say that, listen, this is what the thing actually looks like. Right? So for us, I think we've seen that evolution. What really works is maybe 3 levels. Have platforms where people come together, platforms like Balipara, platforms like Samvar, platforms like people are just coming together and feeling safe and confident enough to express their wisdom in their language. That's just not true for communities, it's also true for the scientific community, it's also true for the academic community. And how does it work? For the longest while, it's very funny, but about 6 years ago, we spoke about the 2-degree temperature change scenario at Samvar. Everyone in the room felt, this is very important, it has to be spoken, but we just didn't crack the language because communities have a different language, but they're saying the same thing, right? So how do you get these platforms together? That's one. Second is proof of action on points. And the one understated thing, which often doesn't come out, is that there's a strong sense of identity. As far as conservation is concerned, how do you sort of tap into that Wi-Fi called identity? And it's not just economics. The economics will work. The economy will work if the identity is taken care of. If that basic confidence is played out in many places. It's played out. There's a lovely story of hip hop from Ulhasnagar in Bombay. What's happening there. It's an expression of identity, and sometimes our language also needs to be there. So maybe proof of points, stalls that you see outside today, the work that you mentioned about with artisans. These are all places where people can discover their identity, which. A lot of indigenous communities actually trace their identity and genealogy back to nature. So if Sourav works in Project Tiger, it's possibly because it pays well, possibly because I'm purpose-driven, but maybe if someone from an indigenous community works in Project Tiger, that's because the tiger means something to them. It's linked to identity. Those are undercurrents which are yet to be discovered but are so powerful. So we have proof of points and action on that, which I think Balipara has developed. And finally, people who are just going out and doing their thing. And the craziest ideas, how do we make them, gently make them ready to grapple with capital and grapple with the economy, and that's the piece that we're working. So platforms, proof points on some of these critical ones, and how do you get the people ready. My compliments again to the Balipara Foundation for doing this and for assembling such a wonderful, wonderful set of people. I'm here for 2 days, and I'm confident that I'll probably learn more than I get into this thing. But thank you so much for having me here. Thank you.